Hey everyone, welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast. Brian and I have each grown physical therapy businesses to 2 million plus in annual revenue. We're looking to get good advice to PTs trying to grow their practices. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast. My name is Dr. Owen Campbell, and with me, as always, is Dr. Brian Wolf. And today we are going to be talking about the early cash pay PT life cycle. And what I mean about that is you've started your own practice, you're starting to get cash payments, people are valuing you as your service, feels awesome, right? And you are getting, sometimes you get more money after a year or two than you thought you might, right? But the issue that we have been seeing in our mastermind practice and with some of the people that we've come across is that, there's this wall that people hit, right? And in sports, we call a rookie wall. But a lot of cash pay practices tend to hit this wall when they get busy. They are full. And now they don't have time to work on building the practice, right? And there's some specific issues with building a cash pay practice that we've talked about before. We'll go over again today. So if you are feeling like you are hitting a wall with this, hopefully this podcast can help you guys out and looking at some strategic ways that you might be able to build and grow your practice so that you have an asset versus just a slightly higher paying job. So with that, as always, Brian, I like to remind people who are listening that you actually started your career. Well, I shouldn't say career, your entrepreneurial career out of the back of your car doing cash only visits. But now you have 5 clinics. They run about half cash, half insurance, right? Where you're doing that fitness, you're the PT to performance kind of model, where if you look at your top line revenue, half of that is coming from people paying out of pocket and half of it's coming from insurance. So I think you'd be an interesting one to kind of tell us things that you've seen, because you've navigated this transition successfully, which not a lot of cash pay PTs can do easily.
Yeah. The reality is, again, I keep talking about it all the time, is where do you want your business to go? What do you want to grow? How do you want to do it? Right. And there's an analogy that I'm going to steal from Alex Ramosi that I love. He talks about how if you're going to build something small as a house, or like the smaller, whatever the smallest thing you're going to build, the foundation doesn't need to be as big. But the bigger you go with whatever you're trying to grow and build, the foundation is bigger and bigger and bigger. Therefore, it's going to take longer and longer and longer to grow. So the reality of what I think I see with a lot of people is they lack a lot of patience. And so what ends up happening is they're saying, hey, what I'm doing and how I'm growing my business and what I'm trying to do, they're like, here are the steps I need to make to grow my business. But the problem that occurs is they're not patient on what they're doing. People overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 10. Mm-hmm. So if you have a vision in your head of what you're trying to grow as your business, think in a 10-year block. If you find yourself saying, hey, I want to start my business, or I didn't really want to be in business for myself for 10 years, then I think you made a fucking mistake, right? like honestly, and again, Owen's making fun of me because I'm getting a little aggressive these last few podcasts. But the reality is, I think there's a lot of people that think the grass is greener in certain places, and they haven't thought through the actions or ramifications of what could potentially be. Yeah. And so what ends up happening is, and again, guys, for those of you who are just starting your practices, like I lived through COVID. Let me tell you something about your cash-based practices. There's a lot of people in a lot of debt because of that. And so cash-based practice is very volatile. So one of the hardest parts of being a solopreneur and how to grow, right, is you've got to take risks, but you've got to also understand the certain skills that mitigate those risks. And so we talked about this, like you got to focus on what's bottlenecking your business and grow. What's bottlenecking your business and grow. Like the biggest thing that me and Owen have thought about is if I'm starting my cash-based practice over again, I am making myself as much money as I possibly can and being as efficient as I possibly can in that practice before I start hiring anything, before I start hiring anybody. And the reality of that is that's from the cash perspective, so I can start to change. Here's the kicker. If you start a cash-based practice and you then go to insurance, realize you're working with people in different buying wallets. Now, it's an okay transition, because a lot of times what happens with insurance is if I'm going from cash pay to insurance, typically more people are excited about that idea, and it will increase more volume, and now it's more of a volume game. However, there's also the aspect of hiring and building a business around that process and how that all works. So if you're thinking about a vision specifically that you have and you don't have a great path to get there and you haven't mapped that process out, that 10-year process or plan, then again, I would caution people from messing around here and going past being a solopreneur, right? Because this starts getting dirty fast. And that's not me. By the way, this is a plug for Physio Growth. If you want help with that, that's what we do. We help people figure this shit out so they don't fuck themselves up. Number one. Number two, if you're like, hey, I wanna be able to grow my business to a point where I don't want to see patients anymore, right? All right, but then why do you want to be in physical therapy in the first place? Right? Like, what's the point?
And even doing that, I mean, you can't do that at cash based.
No,
right?
I stopped seeing patients in my business out of pure necessity. I had no idea that was going to happen. I did it because I was like, we talked about this in the last podcast a little bit, is I had to focus on other stuff building the business. So I realized that the easiest thing to replace was to me to put physical therapists in my clinics that could do this stuff for me. I still treat patients. I still treat some patients, even though I probably shouldn't because it takes up a lot of my time. But it's one of those things where it's like, I love doing it. So I'm in there.
That's the happy part of your day.
Exactly. Yeah. I enjoy it. It's a stress-free side of my day. It's the thing I'm really good at. And so I think that it comes from that perspective.
And I think we have to talk a little bit about, like, let's say the last 10 years, right? And, this kind of insurance rates were good, not good, but decent, right? In like 2010-ish, right? Where you could have a clinic, you could see maybe 9-10 visits a week or 9-10 visits a day, maybe even 8. Like, maybe you could book one an hour and you could still pay your employees rent, all that stuff. Well, cost of living's gone up, right? And insurance rates have gone down. So what happened is all these people jumped out into cash PT probably in like 2014, 2015, right? And everybody looks like a genius in a bull market. If you look at 2015 to 2019, it was nobody could lose in the stock market. Everybody had money, whatever. Like, I'll pay cash, that's fine. Rates are going up, all that stuff. COVID happened. It was a short drop in the market, right? So like you said, there's a lot of people that want to do a lot of debt, right? Who are cash pay at that point because people didn't want them in their homes, all that stuff, right? Like, kind of high risk on that. We can also talk about risk too. I know a PT who, unfortunately, they were in an accident and now they're just begging people to take like contract rates for all their therapists, for all their patients. So you have that risk, right? And then now stock market's gone bananas, since 21 all the way to now. So a lot more people are looking like geniuses, right? So I always, I kind of told Brian when I first started this, like, I know I'm going to have to basically maybe make 40, 60K, right? My first year. Like, I understand that because I need to be marketing and building and all that stuff. But I don't think that's a common thing. I think that the people who I've heard who are like, I want to open cash, and for a very good reason, right, is that they just, they work for a crappy employer, right? They're getting stuff thrown down their throat and they're like, there's got to be something better than this. My loans are due. What do I do? Oh, somebody's like doing well in cash, I'm going to do that. And then they start doing it and they patch together some PRN. But I don't want to make it sound like I'm some genius, but like that part, just getting to the part where you have like a little bit better salary, that's not terribly challenging right now. Now, stock market crashes, it's a lot harder.
Agreed.
But the biggest bottleneck is now what happens when you're busy. Now what happens when people want you? Now what happens, like, where do you go, right? So that's where I think that that's where the business owner mentality versus I want a nicer job and better work-life balance mentality, that's where the wheat gets separated from the chaff, right? Where you have people who understand, okay, I have to sacrifice, I have to, put a bunch of money down to get a space so I can start on all these insurance contracts so that in 2 years I can hire 3 people, right? Or you have people who are like, okay, I got to raise prices and be at this obscene level and outperform and out network all the people in my area. Because let me tell you, the people in Phoenix, at least, that are charging like $250, $300, they've had a practice for 8 to 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. They are exceptionally good in their niche. And guess what? You're not unseating them. Right. So like there's a lot of things that once you hit that wall, like I talk about at the top of the podcast, the rookie wall of I'm busy, I have a full schedule, I can make my normal paycheck. Now what? right?
It's so funny. And here's the
That's what the
irony.
sacrifice comes in.
100%. That's the reality, right? Like when you talk about it, and I think the other part that goes along with patience is that people aren't willing to make the sacrifice for that foundation that I'm talking about. So
Yep.
say you're like, hey, I want to build my practice. So let's do some tactical stuff, right? So Owen charges 175 for patients. Say he's saying, how many patients do you think you could see, Owen?
If I am with going to like a networking meeting, here and there, had to pick the kids up from school, something like that, I'd say comfortable. And a buddy of mine's about the same thing too. He says like comfortable is 22 a week, right? Monday
Yeah.
through Friday. We know a PT who takes 30, but he works 6 days a week.
Yep.
And he's had a business for like 8 years, so he doesn't need to market.
So Owen was at 22 patients, right?
Yep.
At 22 patients, and I'm doing at that point, I'm seeing 52 weeks a year, so I'm not taking a single vacation. That's 200K. So here's the thing.
But I'm not doing the vacation, so you can
No,
drop that
exactly.
right back down to the 180 that it should be.
Yeah. So exactly. So there's the thing, right? So now Owen's at 180. So now the issue is, all right, how do I hire?
Everybody doesn't buy a package because 175 is my single visit.
Exactly.
Right?
And by the way, that's 100% productivity. 100%. Like you don't ever you have a waiting list. Yeah.
People love Phoenix at 115 degrees.
Exactly, right? So the reality of it is the first step is you got to raise your prices to what Owen was talking about. All right, so let's go to 200, right? So 200 times 22. So now I raised my prices to $200 times 22 times let's call it 52. Again, Owen is hustling. That's 228, right? It's still you're not gonna pay another PT 28K, right? That's not gonna happen. Yep. So what you need to do is you need to raise your patient visits up. So again, to most people, I would say, hey, you got to start thinking about getting a clinic, a space. Yep. And if someone's like, all right, well, like that's tough, I'd be like, well, then again, like Owen, what's first off, you know what? I don't want to do this with Owen. I know because I know Owen's going to give me a number and think about it. Let's call it 2K. Anybody can do it for $2,000 to $2,500. You can find a space that works, right? Yep. So let's call it $2,500 just to be on the pricier side. And I'm in Fairfield County, Connecticut. So if you said that's not possible, shut the fuck up. Anyway, because I know it exists here, so that means it exists wherever you and the podunk places are. All right, so now not to offend every listener, but again, my point being is if you can do it in Fairfield County, Connecticut, you can do it in other places, right? All right, so 2,500. So 2,500 times 12, that's $30,000. That means to me, what I would tell anybody in this space is if I'm going to say, okay, you can find that space and deck it out for 30K. What I would tell you is if I'm making 180K and my overhead already for gas and certain things, let's call it the 20K, puts you at 160, you better be prepared to be okay to be at 130, which by the way is still a great fucking salary. But at 130, you're making $130,000. And ultimately, you're putting that 30K towards opening more space to make yourself more efficient. And guess what? It means you can see more patients in more time. And ultimately, you can build the business properly. That's what I would do. That's the bottleneck for a lot of mobile PTs that they don't realize. They're like, let me outsource this. Let me outsource this. No. Get your time back. Go to a location. Yeah. Stop screwing around with this mobile PT shit. Because what happens is, and by the way, again, when I say all these things on this podcast, Owen's laughing, but Owen also knows that that's like his plan. Like me and Owen have talked about this multiple times, right? So if you came to Physio Growth and said, I want to grow this mobile PT, but I don't know how to grow it, I'd be like, get a location, like because that's just the reality of the situation. Yeah. If you want to be a solopreneur and charge an obscene amount of money, you got to go to different people and different houses. And then I know Owen wants to talk here, but in terms of like to just re-go over what Owen was talking about on the payment side of things about insurance reimbursement going down. It's not so much that reimbursement has gone down; it's that it hasn't gone up. So you just have to be. And again, like I was watching. I got a funny one. I got a funny one for you, Owen. I was watching Boy Meets World yesterday with my kids. The first pilot episode, right? My 10-year-old, she's so into it because, like, again, that show was great, right?
Corey and Topanga.
Corey, by the way, is now 44 years old, which is crazy. He was 11 in that show. To give you an idea, right? Exactly. So to give you an idea of that. That was a grocery store manager, was the dad who owned a nice house with a white picket fence in the yard that I'm like, anywhere in the country now, this is $1 million, this house. So my point being is inflation has gone up drastically, right? And this is the U.S. Obviously, it's gone over the world. So the reality is that's why people are talking about these salaries. It's just our reimbursement rates haven't gone up. So that's why a lot of businesses are triple booking, double booking, trying to drive through physical therapy, through volume. The reality is you also don't have to do that. Like that's where the cash-based hybrid stuff works, is you can get more creative on a one-to-many model and play around with certain things as well. So anyway, that's a global kind of synopsis of it as a takeaway is look at the bottlenecks in your business, make appropriate decisions on how you want to grow the business in the direction you want to grow. I would say if somebody wants to stay mobile, just raise your prices and be a solopreneur forever, because building an asset is very difficult there. But if you want to go into an asset-based business, grow it to something which is sustainable, where ultimately you can say, hey, this is awesome where I'm going, and I know there's different places to go. That's where I would build a location and build around that.
Yeah, and to kind of put a bow on it, like if it's very challenging for a physical therapy business to fail with how many people need us, how few there are, and all that. But some of the only ones I've seen fail in the last few years have been cash-paced PTs who have a bunch of contractors, right?
Yes.
And they just are churning like crazy with employee attrition. And then they just get to the point where they're like, this isn't worth it. I'm going to go back to doing my own thing.
Yeah.
So
there is a ceiling
on cash pay PT. And I mean, hey, there are people that have done it, right? But almost always they get to like 2 clinics, right?
Why do you think we're buying them up now?
I know.
It's a business, right? Like that's the reality. Like so one of the other things that's happening is
sell for a multiple. Like they're
exactly.
cheap.
So now they want to be part of us, right? So here's the thing that's interesting when it comes to these other things, like what Owen was just talking about, and these churn. The other thing I would talk about is like, say you're like, oh my God, I want to hire a PT, but I can't find somebody. It's because your practice isn't cool. Number one. Number two, like it's not as cool as you think it is. Number one. Number two is when you actually go to hire somebody, and like then they realize that they could do it on their own, and they're churning. Realize that like all that work you put in to get that employee, I don't say it goes out the window, but it becomes much more challenging, because now what happens is I've just fought tooth and nail to get that PT, but they didn't like they thought the grass was greener. Then they came and worked for me, and they were like, oh, it's not what I thought it would be. And so now you've just shrunk your pool even more in that capacity. Mm-hmm. So again, I just think the mobile cash-based PT model doesn't scale well. It doesn't scale well. And to your point, like you've seen it over and over again. I'm sure there's people that can do it, but show me the cash mobile PT practice that has multiple locations in multiple states. I don't think it exists, right? Because why? Because these freaking giant home care companies with insurance base are going to smash them.
But right? I'm in 6 CrossFit gyms.
Exactly.
And really what that is there's 2 people with 2 tables going to different CrossFit gyms at different times. And it's like, you don't have 6 locations.
Exactly. That's it. That's it. And so I think it comes through it's very volatile, and that makes it challenging. Yeah. So,
cool. So to answer the question at the beginning of the podcast, get a location and start buying back your time.
Yes.
Don't
efficiency because real quick, because I know we got to land it, right? So like again, now all of a sudden, how many patients could you see if you did hour treats? You could do 40, right? 40.
Oh yeah.
So now say I'm charging 175. What Owen's paying now, 175 times 40, right? That's now all of a sudden it just turned into $364,000.
That's 100%.
Yeah, that's a business. You see what I'm saying? Like that's the difference. You've got to get back your time. And I get it. A lot of people, if they're listening, well, I really want to treat people with their homes. No, you don't. You don't have money for a space. Like, let's be real. Let's be real, guys. Like when we started the mobile stuff, like I don't have money for the space yet. It's too risky. I'm not sure. Well, then you got to take a step back to grow it. Just know that you're a step behind other people that are opening up a place for themselves. So just be honest with yourself. Just realize where this is going. It doesn't mean you're failing. If you are going after, again, here's my inspirational piece. If you're going after your dream and have a dream practice in mind of what you're trying to do, don't rush it, guys. It's a 10-year process, right? Take the 10 years, eat the bleep, and just do the work.
You that, but like 6 other times
did it.
You threw
well,
up.
This was supposed to be for Instagram. He messed me up on mine. All right, so exactly. The clip would have been it. Eat the shit that you need to eat to get to the place you want to get to. And the reality is there's sacrifice involved in that. That's the key. And people aren't willing to do that. So anyway, this is the type of stuff we help people with physio growth. We help people grow. We help people learn this process. We help people be realistic about what they're doing so they can actually build the dream practice they want to build. Again, physio-growth.com. Join us, guys. $99 a month. Anybody can make that sacrifice. I respect the grind that you're doing. And these types of conversations, you make that move that we just talked about, you just made an extra $150K.
Yeah, I worked it out the other day. That is, if I bought a $4, which would be the cheap coffee at Starbucks, every business day as I went on to work, the same exact, it would be, no, $5, sorry, $5, it would be the same as buying a physio growth membership.
Yeah, so the value is
make coffee at home, learn some shit.
I love it. I love
All
it.
right, and with that, we are out, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
All right,
See ya.
have fun clipping this up for Instagram later.
Exactly.
All right, bye.
See ya.